As they typically say, when you go woke, you go broke. And Sri Lanka is an example of that actually happening. This is an article back from 2013 talking about Sri Lanka is going to be a classic model of wealth creation. And this is according to the president that existed at this time. And it's Rajapaksa said Sri Lanka strives for high economic growth to propel the country towards a middle-income nation by 2016. And of course, moving forward, obviously looking forward, this did not happen. And this article is from 2013. It is from Business Standard, talking about how they're going to move forward, they were going to go green. And this is where a lot of the green initiative has come from in many of these other small countries, where they receive loans from like the World Economic Forum, the IMF, many of these other banks that basically utilize this whole green narrative movement to basically bankrupt nations so that they can then rob them of their resources. And of course, it wasn't that Sri Lanka didn't have the infrastructure. They did. You can look at it here in helping Sri Lanka to go green. They got involved with a Dutch company that specializes in windmills of all things. And of course, the wind farm, it says here in this article that the wind farm officially opened by Sri Lanka, the Prime Minister, by Mahinda Rajapaksa on the 20th, on December 8th in 2020. And so the result is that the country collapsed because as energy prices started to go up, their green movement completely and utterly failed them, as a lot of the dollars that they had to use to go out and buy oil in the global economy started to rise, and they couldn't afford oil. And of course, if you can't afford oil, you can't afford transportation and everything else that goes along with it, which is basically your infrastructure for all of these countries. And so here is another article. This is from the Times of India, talking about lessons from Sri Lanka crisis, how not to go green, plus how not to do business with China. And so now Sri Lanka is basically broke because they went woke. And for many of these countries that go in that route, the problem is that they're going to end up owing all these countries when they can't pay back the loan. When they can't pay back their loan for the millions and millions of dollars that their government borrows on people's behalf. And they'll be like, okay, well, give me that land, give me that farmland, give me all your ports and whatever else of value that you have. And then basically the people become slaves. And this is how monetary debt slavery works. This is what they do. They loan money out to these countries, but they tell them, oh, you got to do this, right? Because if you want to be a part of our movement, if you want us to help you, well, then you got to go green, right? Just like to be part of NATO, you gotta buy military. You gotta have, it's like 2% of your GDP has to go towards buying military equipment. And when many of these countries fail, the governments just turn around and say, you know what? I'm going to take your ports, I'm going to take your farmland, I'm going to take your infrastructure, and we'll give it back to you in 100 years or something to that effect. And this is how many of these countries that are basically being abused. And this is what happens. This is just socialism. This is basically what you get. And many of these countries are following the World Economic Forum, which is just basically an extension of the cathedral, which is basically with America being the chief military of the cathedral. And so hopefully we'll see many of these countries collapse, including America. And then maybe people will decide to go a different route, because sometimes you got to starve the stupid out of people. And this is basically where we're at. You have a lot of people that are begging for socialism, not realizing that they're going to starve. And it's like, if you see the writing on the wall, the only thing you can do is prepare, because the outcome is going to be what happened in Sri Lanka. Maybe not in places like in America, but Europe, all these people are going to go through crises. There's going to be food shortages, or food is going to be so expensive, and then maybe they'll start to think a little smarter. And of course, the narrative will always be, well, that wasn't real communism. That wasn't real socialism. That's typically what we hear. This is what they did wrong. Let's try it again. This is the route. Basically, we're like stuck in Groundhog Day, where people just keep doing the same stupid shit over and over and over again, and it will always lead to the same outcome. Anyway, expect more of this in the near future, especially as the dollar starts to rise. We are in an energy crisis. And as much as the government is talking about how our peak inflation is going to go away, it's not. It's actually going to get a lot worse in the years to come. Anyway, I'm going to leave it here. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.